was on a trip to Wartburg, Tennessee, to visit the Obed National Wild and Scenic River with my girlfriend at the time, who is my now wife. Wartburg is a small town, and there's only one hotel, which, if you look it up on Google, has an old mattress sitting outside as its profile picture. But the river is beautiful, and we were really looking forward to the trip. And we were coming back from another state park, in the middle of nowhere, around 1 or 2 a.m., just back roads for miles, no signs of civilization, and we had not seen another car for at least a half an hour. It had been raining lightly for about an hour, so we're crossing this curved bridge over a creek, and as we turn, we see a guy just sitting there on the concrete guardrail, in the middle of nowhere, at 2 a.m., in the rain. He did not look dangerous, just a guy in his 20s, wearing a plaid shirt. But going from seeing no cars for miles, to suddenly seeing some dude on a bridge at that hour, startled the both of us. We jumped and said, "What the fuck?" at the same time. He casually looked at us as we drove by, and we did not slow down. And about 20 minutes later, we were dipping in and out of cell service, and were completely lost. Google Maps kept losing connection, then popping back in with "stay straight" every so often. We just kept driving, hoping it was leading us the right way. We saw dark houses and driveways every now and then, but it was after 2 a.m., so it was nerve-wracking, especially after seeing that guy on the bridge. Then, Google Maps told us to take a right at a 3-way intersection. The choices were straight or right, so I took the turn. But as soon as I did, I knew it was a mistake. The road dipped down from asphalt to gravel, then to dirt with weeds growing through it. And after a bit, it did not even look like a road anymore, more like a field with barely visible tire ruts. Trees were maybe 30 yards away on both sides. Now, I'm used to driving a 4-wheel drive truck for work, but on this trip, we were in a little 2-wheel drive Honda. I started to get worried that if we had to stop for a deer or something, we'd get stuck in the mud. But Google Maps insisted that this was the way to Wartburg, so I kept going. And after about 10 minutes, the road dead-ended in thick brush and a massive fallen tree. And it was obvious no one had driven through here in years, not even an ATV. I backed up to a more solid patch of ground, and we turned around. I had turned off traction control earlier because it can mess you up off-road, and as I started to accelerate, the wheels spun in the mud. For what felt like forever, but was probably only 5 to 10 seconds, we barely got any traction. Finally, the wheels caught, and we made our way back toward the main road. But here's where it gets creepy. As we started heading back uphill, just as the road turned from dirt to gravel, there was a medium-sized tree blocking our path. This tree had not been there before. I could see the asphalt road just up ahead, but the tree now stood in the way. There were thick woods on both sides of the road, no houses nearby, and no way anyone had carried it out here on foot. My girlfriend said, "Is that really how we came down here? What are the odds of a tree falling in the few minutes we were down that road?" But it didn't fall. It had been dragged there, and I could see the marks in the dirt, long, curved lines where branches had scraped the ground. The tree had been pulled into place like someone was closing a gate behind us. Someone had seen us pass and dragged that tree there in the 20 minutes we were down that dead-end road at 2:30 a.m. in the rain. I tried to stay calm for my girlfriend's sake, but internally, I was freaking out. I grabbed my big rechargeable spotlight I had bought for camping, rolled down the window, and shined it into the woods on my side. Nothing. I got out of the car and scanned the other side, up the road, back behind us. Nothing. I did not see a soul. I quickly dragged the tree to the other side of the road, got back into the car, and floored it. We made it back to the main road and finally reached the shitty Wartburg Hotel. Needless to say, we did not sleep well that night. I don't know what happened. Maybe Google Maps sends non-locals down that road all the time, and some locals like to mess with people. Maybe we drove through a hunting spot and some guys in tree stands thought it'd be funny to scare us. But for a minute, I really thought we stumbled past a meth lab or moonshine operation, and we were about to get killed. I did not tell my girlfriend the tree had been dragged until later. She said, "What? Well, thanks for not telling me that while we were sitting there, because I would have cried." So, I live in a pretty secluded town. It's the kind of place that gets pitch black at night unless you have your porch light on. One night I was driving home late, like really late, maybe around 1 a.m. or so. The only reason I was out so late was because I had to work overtime that day. So I'm driving along this narrow country road, just trying to stay awake long enough to get home, when I see something strange up ahead. At first, I couldn't really make it out. It was just this figure moving along the side of the road. As I got closer, my headlights hit him, and that's when I saw him clearly. A guy, well, I think it was a guy, riding a bike. But he wasn't just any guy. He was extremely pale, like his skin was almost glowing white in the dim light, and he was weirdly tall. But here's the kicker. He was riding a bike that was way too small for him. Like, imagine a grown man, maybe 6'5", on a kid's bike. His knees were sticking out at odd angles, and he was pedaling in this awkward, jerky way. We made eye contact for just a second as I slowed down for a stop sign. His face was long, gaunt, and his eyes, they looked right through me. There was something off about the way he stared, something that made my stomach drop. He did not smile or wave or anything, just kept staring at me with this blank, unsettling expression. That was enough for me. I gunned it as soon as I could and drove the last mile to my house as fast as I had ever driven down that road. By the time I got to the dead end where I live, I was already on edge. I parked the car, ran inside, turned off all the lights, and locked the doors behind me. My dog, a husky named Max, usually greets me at the door, all excited. But that night, he didn't. Instead, he ran straight to the front window and started barking his head off. Now, Max doesn't usually bark unless there's a reason, so I was already kind of freaked out. I walked over to the window, still thinking about that creepy guy, and peeked outside. It was so dark, I couldn't see anything at first. But then, one by one, the motion-activated lights on the houses across the street started turning on. First one, then the next, all in a line, like someone was moving down the road, setting them off. Except, I didn't see anyone. I stood there watching, heart pounding, trying to make sense of it. The last light on the corner house came on, and then immediately clicked off, followed by this weird noise, kind of like chains rattling, or keys jingling, and then heavy footsteps, like someone running hard. Max was still barking, louder now, and I could feel the panic rising in my chest. And then, nothing. Silence. The lights all shut off, one by one, and the street went dark again. I strained my eyes, looking for any sign of movement, but there was nothing. No person, no bike, nothing. My dog suddenly let out this weird whimper, and then slumped back to the couch, shaking. I've never seen him act that way before or since. I stood there, frozen for what felt like forever, waiting for something else to happen, but it didn't. I checked all the locks, closed all the curtains, and try to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe a stray animal setting off the lights. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The weirdest part? The next morning I checked around outside. No signs of anyone having been there. No bike tracks, no footprints, nothing. I asked a couple of my neighbors if they'd heard or seen anything strange the night before, and they all said no. And I've never seen that guy again, and nothing like that has ever happened since. But I can't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong that night. The way he looked at me, like he knew something I didn't, still gives me chills when I think about it. And those lights, they did not just turn on by themselves. And to this day, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gunned it at the stop sign. If I had been just a little slow at getting out of my car. Maybe nothing, maybe everything, but I'll never know. What I do know is that whatever was out there that night wasn't normal. It was like something out of a nightmare, and I hope to God I never run into it again. Has anyone else experienced something like this? I've tried to rationalize it, but the more I think about it, the less sense it makes. And 2 years ago, I had an experience on my way to work that still chills me to my core. I don't typically believe in the supernatural, and I'm a pretty rational person overall. But what I saw that morning defies all logic. Maybe it was some freak animal, but I've never seen or heard anything like it. My commute takes me down a long, straight road that cuts through a heavily wooded area. It's a quiet, isolated stretch, and in the early morning darkness, it can be pretty eerie. I've driven that road hundreds of times without incident, and despite the occasional deer or fox crossing, I've never really thought much about it. That morning, I left home around 4:30 a.m. As usual. It was still dark, and the road was empty. I wasn't fully awake yet, just going through the motions of another workday. I was cruising along when, in the distance, I noticed something by the side of the road. At first glance, I thought it was just a large, dark dog sitting there. I did not think much of it, but as I got closer, something felt off. This thing was huge, bigger than any dog I had ever seen. I slowed down, not wanting it to dart out in front of my car. But as my headlights hit it, the animal slowly stood up. That's when I realized this wasn't any normal dog. It stood on all fours, but the way it moved was unsettling. Its front legs were much more muscular than its hind legs, almost like a hyena, and its posture seemed wrong for a dog. It had a long, bushy tail and pointy ears that twitched slightly as it retreated into the bushes. The snout was too long, and its eyes, well, they weren't reflecting the headlights like an animal's usually do. They just stared, dark and empty. I sat there for a second, watching it disappear into the trees. My heart was pounding, but I did not see it again. I drove on, trying to convince myself that I'd just seen a large coyote or a wolf, maybe a bear even. But deep down, I knew this was something else. The weirdest part was that for the rest of the week, I did not see any other animals on that road. Usually I'd spot a deer or two, maybe a fox or hear birds at least. But it was dead silent. No movement, no signs of life. It was like everything had just vanished. A few days after my encounter, I heard about some missing livestock in the area. 2 sheep had gone missing from a farm not far from where I saw the creature. And then a horse was reported missing as well. When they found the horse, it had been mutilated, torn apart in a way that was brutal and unnatural. Part of it had been eaten, but whatever did it seemed to leave most of the carcass behind. I couldn't shake the feeling that the thing I saw was responsible. It matched the timing too perfectly. People started talking about wolves or a bear, but I hadn't seen or heard of anything like that being spotted in our area for years. Predators that big just don't roam around here, at least not normally. I kept driving that same road every morning, but now I couldn't help but feel watched. Every shadow seemed a little darker, every rustle in the trees a little louder, and I started leaving the house later, waiting until it was fully light outside. I did not want to be on that road in the dark again. One morning, about a month after the incident, I found a strange set of tracks near the edge of the road. They were massive, like something you'd expect from a bear, but the shape was all wrong. They had claw marks, but the space in between them did not match any animal I knew of. It was like whatever I saw that day had come back, but this time it had left something behind. I never reported it to anyone. What would I even say? I'm not sure I want to know what it was, and I've since moved to another town, far from that road. But sometimes, when I'm driving early in the morning, I still catch myself scanning the roadside, half expecting to see those dark, empty eyes watching me from the trees. If you're ever on a dark, isolated road in the early morning hours, keep your eyes open, because sometimes what you see isn't just a trick of the light. It was late October, 2016, Northern California, just after a weekend camping trip with two of my friends. We were headed home, taking one of those winding two-lane roads through the woods. You know the type, dark as hell, trees pressing in from both sides. It was around 10 p.m., no one else on the road, and the only lights came from my headlights. The area we were driving through was mostly public land, but you'd see the occasional private driveway branching off into the woods, leading to homes tucked away from civilization. I'd driven these roads before, and they never felt exactly safe, even though we were nowhere near anything that could be considered dangerous. It was just isolated. We were cruising along, talking about nothing important, when I saw her, a woman, standing dead in the middle of the road, right on the other side of the lane divider. My headlights hit her for just a split second before we passed. She was pale, almost glowing, with long hair hanging over her face, wearing what looked like a nightgown or some kind of loose white dress. Her head was tilted down, hair covering her face, and her arms were up, barely lifted, like she was trying to flag us down. But it didn't seem right. The way her body swayed, like she was too weak to even stand up properly. I did not even think. My foot slammed the gas pedal to the floor, and I flew past her, my heart pounding in my chest. I remember shouting, "Nope, nope, not today." My friends in the car went dead silent for a moment, but then they started freaking out too. "Did you see that? What the hell was that?" They both saw her, clear as day. We spent the next half hour in this weird state of shock, half laughing to cover up how much it freaked us out. One of them is a big believer in ghosts, and she was convinced we'd just seen some kind of highway spirit. Apparently that's a thing. A woman wandering the road looking for help, vanishing if you stop. But I don't think what we saw was a ghost. I think it was something worse. My first thought, it was a trap. Someone sends out a girl like that, looking all messed up, and some poor sucker stops to help her. Easy target. There are plenty of stories of people getting ambushed that way, especially in wooded areas like this. The more I think about it though, the more I wondered if she was a victim. Maybe she escaped one of those secluded houses in the woods, running from something or someone. The way she moved, it felt like she was injured or drugged. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens in places like that. Could have been a bad trip. Could have been something worse. I don't know, and I don't want to. But I can't shake the feeling that whoever she was, she did not belong out there. And whatever happened to her, it wasn't good. We never went back to that road again. Around 4 years ago, I was driving home from a concert on the interstate. It was late, around 11:30 or midnight, and I was somewhere in the middle of nowhere, halfway home. The concert had been in the city, but the drive was long, and this stretch of road was deserted. I hadn't passed an exit for miles, and it would be several more before the next one came up. The only light was my headlights cutting through the darkness. As I drove, something caught my eye on the shoulder up ahead. At first, it looked like some kind of animal, but as I got closer, I realized it was a man. He was dressed in a suit jacket, down on all fours, patting the ground in small circles. His movements were slow and deliberate, like he was looking for something. My immediate thought was how much he reminded me of Velma from Scooby-Doo, the way she crawls around looking for her glasses. Only, this wasn't funny. It was eerie. The first thing that struck me as odd was that there were no cars anywhere nearby. Nothing on the shoulder, no signs of a crash, not even tire marks. It was just him, out there on his hands and knees, in the middle of nowhere. I've driven that stretch of road plenty of times, both during the day and at night. The only thing beyond the guardrail is endless, empty fields. No houses, no rest stops, no landmarks. Just black nothingness. So where did he come from? I slowed down for a second, my mind racing. I thought about pulling over, but something deep inside me screamed not to. My gut told me this was wrong, that there was no good reason for a guy to be out here, in the dead of night, crawling on the side of the road without a car in sight. He did not even look up as I passed. He just kept patting the ground, focused on whatever invisible thing he was searching for. My foot hovered over the brake for a second, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. The whole situation felt off in a way I can't fully explain. So I kept driving, my heart racing the further I got from him. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see him running after my car, but there was nothing. Just the empty road and the darkness swallowing everything behind me. I did not see another car for at least 10 minutes after that. When I finally did, part of me considered flashing my lights to warn them. But what was I going to say? There's a guy crawling around in a suit on the side of the road. It sounded insane. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was probably just some drunk guy who got stranded. Maybe he had a phone. Maybe help was already on the way. I wanted to believe that. But it did not add up. There were no cars, no lights from a phone. Just him, out there alone. The memory of that night has stuck with me ever since. I keep trying to tell myself there was a rational explanation, but no matter how I spin it, something feels wrong. Like, really wrong. I even looked up news stories from that area, trying to find anything about a guy wandering around or a missing person, but there was nothing, not a single mention. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if I had stopped. Would I have helped him? Or would I have ended up out there, patching the ground in the dark, looking for something I'd never find? I'm glad I did not stop to find out.
Hey, what's up guys? It's Spooky. If you've made it this far, congratulations, you survived. If you did not know, I have an Instagram. Follow me on there so we can connect. I also have a Patreon. On there, you'll have direct access to me and can see the upcoming videos, polls, and soon-to-be exclusive stories only shared on there. If that's something that interests you, please consider joining. That's all I have for you guys tonight. Stay spooky, and I'll see you in the next video.